Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Max Illingworth here, and thank you in advance for supporting my Patreon page. I really appreciate the support, and as a thanks, I'm actually recording a video here where I'll take you through a blitz game played between two of the world's strongest chess players, namely Veselin Topalov playing with the white pieces against Hikaru Nakamura playing with the black pieces. And this game, in fact, was decided in only 23 moves, which is a real testament to Nakamura's strength as a blitz player. So let's see how this game played out. We had d4, knight to f6, c4, because we know that as a relatively younger player, Nakamura loved to play the King's Indian defense, before he switched to playing the more solid Queen's Gambit. Declined by comparison with knight f3 and d5, as I like to write about in my chess publishing columns as such. So in this case we see the more tactical Nakamura at play. So we had knight to c3, bishop to g7, e4, d6, and among various options for white in this position, white opted for the Samisch variation with f3. Now, who here can tell me what might be the disadvantage of playing a move such as f3 in this position? Well, we can say that the knight is no longer able to access that f3 square, as we might see, for example, in the classical variation of the King's Indian, where we develop our kingside in a very cohesive sort of manner as such. So with f3 we're aiming for a somewhat different setup. Well, we'll see it in the game, where white can basically put his knight on e2, or let's say if we put our knight on d7 for argument's sake, well, that knight may also go to the h3 square, now that the bishop is not threatening to take the knight as such. So in the game Nakamura went for what's known as the Pano setup, which is where you play the move a6, and the idea of that is that, okay, we're not playing in the centre with e5 or c5 perhaps, as we do in most variations of the King's Indian, but black can show that he has another trick up his sleeve, where, for example, he can play rook b8 and try to chip away at white's centre with the move b5. And so if white were to castle queenside, we would have a ready-made attack on the king. As one tip I can say that I think rook c1 is a pretty good move for white in this position, with the idea that if we were to play b5 for argument's sake, well, after c takes, what would be a nice little trick that white can play in this position. Give you a moment to find it. Yeah, very good. We can indeed play knight takes b5, so that if they take our knight, white can take ours, and well, white would win a pawn in this position. Bishop d7, we can tuck our rook away on some safe square, and keep our position nice and tidy. So Nakamura didn't play rook b8 actually. He played a slightly off the wall move of knight to a5, and such moves, moving that piece a second time, you might easily think, well, okay, this is not really in accordance with, the good old school style of chess. But now with computers these days, actually, there are all sorts of these weird moves that can prove to be quite reasonable, in fact. Out of interest, let's say if you're in white's shoes, let's get a little fancy and flip the board around here. What do you think would be a good move for white in this position? How might we deal with the threat of knight takes c4? So I'll give you a little bit of time to think about it here. So, okay, you can pause the video as well if you need a bit more time. So here goes. White, I think, has probably 3, maybe 4 different options for defending the pawn. The most common one is to play knight c1, and that does defend the pawn quite well, and you sort of have this question of, well, whose knight is worse placed, the one on a5 or the one on c1? And, well, black might go knight d7 and try to get in c5, and there try and get some sort of Benko Gambit sort of play. such as with, say, bishop e2, c5, and there's more just an illustrative line, but a move like b5 could give black a pretty decent kind of Benko gambit here, where he might even be able to entertain knight b6 and try and jump into c4. That could definitely be a little bit annoying for white here. So that's kind of black's basic idea, that he wants to get his queenside play going with the support of the a5 knight. Don't worry if it looks a little bit weird. I also thought it was a little strange when I first saw it. So after knight to a5, I'm not sure if this was Van Kampen's recommendation in his Cutting Edge King's Indian video series on Chess24. Remember he recommends the Pano. Can't remember if it was knight a5, but I think it might have been. Back when I was looking at this a few years ago, I think I conclude that knight g3 is not such a bad move either. It's true that black has a nice trick with b5, and if we were to take, then we certainly have to be mindful of these knight b3 tactics, using that pin on the a file to potentially pick up an exchange, such as with bishop b5. And yeah, I'm surprised that some strong players have fallen for this as white, but there you go. But my idea wasn't actually to take b5, but rather to go bishop h6 and go for a big hack attack with h4 and h5. It can bring good old Harry the H pawn to the fore in this sort of line. And granted, maybe from a computer's point of view, I think the computer probably could defend this position as black. But our attack is pretty natural, and we can sort of play the standard ideas of maybe playing a knight d5 and trading off the knight, defending the king as well for our h-file attack. And indeed, in practice, white does score pretty well from here. So that was one of the main reasons I kind of stopped playing knight a5 as black, back when I was, a very enthusiastic King's Indian player. But in the game, white played b3, and that does allow a nice little trick on black's part, where, okay, I'll give you a moment to see if you can find the trick at black's disposal here. So, turns out b5 is actually a pretty good move in this position, where after c takes b5 and a takes b5, obviously we don't want to run into that a-file pin again with knight b5 and knight b3. So Topalov played a nice solid move of rook c1. And out of interest, if we just play this move of c6 and now knight to g3, how would you assess this position here? Who do you think is better? Or conversely, do you think the position is equal? Give you a moment to think about it. Okay, so for this position here, there are sort of a few different options for black actually, where I rather like Nakamura's h5 because it kind of gives white something to think about. He has to think, well, what do we do about h4 kicking the knight back? It's certainly not the only move. I do think that e5 is by no means a bad option either, trying to hit the white centre from the other angle. But h5 in blitz is sort of an annoying move, because you sort of have to think on every move, well, what if my knight just gets kicked back? So we had bishop d3, and, well, if you play h4, white sort of has a very harmonious piece placement with his piece in the centre. And, sometimes you have to watch out for moves like bishop g5, just mean that pawn can become a bit of a target on h4. So that is why Nakamura changed tack here and played the move e5 at this moment. Now, of course, when you have this pawn tension, there's always this question of, well, sort of who benefits from the exchange as such. So there is definitely the option of d takes e5 in this position. I suppose, I don't think black should really be in danger in this sort of position. Certainly black has equal white sort of space, and, his pawn structure is solid enough on the queen side. It's true that c6 is a backward pawn, but I think we can defend it pretty well. Maybe we can bring our knight to d7, and I think our pieces will find natural squares in this sort of structure. Or we can also have the knight on g3 is not particularly great when we have the distance 4 concept at play, with a g6 knight constricting that g6 pawn, I should say, constricting the g3 knight. So I think that would be quite decent for black. Topalov decided to keep the tension with knight g to e2. Practically speaking, I'm not sure if that was the best move. I think d5 is... It avoids all the kind of tricks in the position. You know, it means that we can keep everything nice and tidy. Whereas in a game with b4, we can sort of see white's play does get just a little bit disrupted. So after knight a4, it kind of makes sense to play ed4, where when you think about it, black is getting a healthy amount of play here. And I do feel that it might already be easier to play black just because, well, we have this nice amount of space where, you know, the a4 knight is a bit offside. The a2 pawn can be quite weak as well if we can get rid of that knight in some form. And, well, just somehow black's pieces are just a bit more active. It's kind of like this bishop is sort of on the outside looking in, and these bishops are sort of on the inside looking out a little bit. And perhaps aren't as good as they look. So at this point, I think this makes a really good puzzle, actually, where I invite you to see if you can find the maneuver that Nakamura played in this position. So feel free to pause the video if you need a bit of time to think about it. So in any case, let's see what Nakamura played. It's true I indicate bishop d7 is probably not a bad move either. If you go bishop d7, maybe white was worried about something like e5, where I don't know how much I trust it, because we are opening the centre while our king is uncastled. But maybe we can get away with it, where d5 and knight c5 would, you know, let our knight back in the game, and there are some little tactical problems for black at this moment. So in that sense, Nakamura's move is very prophylactic. And I find that's one thing Nakamura is very good at in his blitz, is sort of figuring out what the opponent's idea is and then playing in a way that makes that ineffective. So they suddenly have to change tack with not much time on the clock. And, you know, that's often when mistakes can be made, when the opponent can't come up with a good contingency plan or sort of adapt to the changed circumstances quickly. So in that sense, I think knight d7 is a very powerful move. Just taking the sting out of e5, but also, you know, opening up the idea of challenging the bishop on d3. And, you know, it's not so easy for white to stop that plan, because f4 is a little bit loosening, where we might then be able to, you know, maximize the pressure on the e4 pawn accordingly. So I think Topalov's move of castles is pretty sensible, actually. We had knight to e5, continuing the plan, and, well, after rook fd1, we can, well, if I had this position here as black, I know my first thought would be, well, what if we can take that bishop with knight takes d3 and bishop a6, kind of taking that nice bishop pair advantage. I suppose Nakamura probably rejected it because he was a bit concerned of the pressure against the d6 pawn. I'm not 100% sure it's that big of a problem. Yeah, maybe we can put our queen on, yeah, I could sort of cheat a little bit and see what the coloured squares are, the better moves. Because I was going to say queen e7, but I realised that knight c5 might actually be a little bit of a nuisance. Or even knight b6 to d5 actually could also be a way for white to keep some grip over the position. So maybe it's better to play queen c7 and just make sure that the knight stays out of play, and who knows, maybe we can go f5 and sort of try to undermine white's centre that way in the near future. In any case, I sort of feel that knight d3 might be the most precise move, just to put pressure on the, well, just to take the bishop pair advantage in an unbalanced structure. But bishop e6 is, in a way, Nakamura's move kind of worked better, in that, you know, when you play knight d3, white's moves are kind of quite straightforward. You know, it's a clear sort of target that he wants to go after the d6 pawn and try to get his knight to d5. You know, it's not difficult to play white's position, let's say. Whereas after bishop e6, you kind of have a choice as white in terms of, you have to figure out what plan you would go for. And this really was the turning point in game where Topalov perhaps lost his sense of danger a little bit. So once again, you have a chance to pause the video and try to find a better move than Topalov. So what would be your choice here with white to play? Okay, let's reveal the answer. So in the game, Topalov played knight f4, which we will get to in a sec. Once we look at this knight f4 move a bit more deeply, we'll understand why white should have played bishop c2, clearing the way for the queen also to target the d6 pawn. Certainly we can defend it with knight b7, but then I think we are more ready to play knight f4 and sort of go after this bishop. I'll just flip the board around as well, just so you can sort of see this from black's point of view again. Because knight f4 I think is a very good move positionally, aiming for d5 and to grab the bishop pair, but it fails for tactical reasons. So I'll give you a moment just to see if you can find the move that black can play to actually get a winning advantage as such. Feel free to pause the video as you need. So okay, so here black has a really powerful hammer blow. We can play this move bishop takes b3 here. And yeah, they kind of have to take, right? But then there's knight takes, and maybe Topalov didn't think this was such a big problem, that after knight c1 and rook takes c1, we have to take with the rook because the queen does have to keep the knight covered. He probably thought, okay, I do have these two pieces for a rook and two pawns. And yeah, the two pawns rook are usually a bit better than the two minor pieces. But yeah, if you get in your knight to d5 and you have knight to c4, then your white would actually have a pretty good blockade on the light squares. This position may not be so bad. The problem is that these sort of positional ideas alone are not enough. You also have to be aware of all the tactical possibilities going on. So I'll give you a chance to see if you can find the move that Nakamura found in this position to obtain a winning advantage. Again, feel free to pause the video. So at this point, it turns out bishop b6 is actually incredibly strong. And in fact, white resigned in this position, which it seems a little bit early, but I guess if you move that knight, we can just take the rook. That's not so difficult. So what white might do instead is play a move like bishop e3. It seems a lot more natural, right? But it turns out that there is a little tactic that we can play as black in this position. I have to admit, actually, I hadn't seen it when I first looked at this. It took me a moment to also spot it. So what do you think would be a good move for black in this position to pick up a little bit of material? Okay, so you might know the advice to look for all checks and captures, especially when you feel there's a tactical solution. Because, when you're solving tactics puzzles, you probably will find that basically the answer will often be one of these forcing moves, a check or a capture or a threatening move. So in that sense, the move rook to a4 is a really nice shot. It just removes all the defenders. We have bishop f4, both the bishops are under fire, and it gets worse for white after bishop to f4 and knight d3. Well, they're already down two pawns, but they're also losing at least the exchange. So it really is time for white to call it quits. Just incidentally to show one other line. If you do play g3, I think you end up getting hit by the same sort of thing. Where, actually now that I think of it, I even wonder if c4 is also a move in this position. So I was thinking it might have worked with the bishop on e3, in fact. The idea of c4 is if you were to take, that you can play this rook a4 move at the end to pick up the knight. I just realised I can actually play knight to g6 and use the pin, but I don't think that really works for black. It's showing a few complicated variations, but I think that d5 will be a very nice move, just to break that pin on the queen. And if they do play, say, queen to d5, for instance, well, this doesn't really work for white. We can sort of just collect the harvest with, say, knight takes d5, and rather importantly, the rook is on pre at the end. So all is well and good for black. So what else can white do? If they play bishop to e2, then I think b3 is just going to pick up the knight next move. So I don't think white can really do this either. For all I know, there might be a better move than c4, but I think this is going to be sufficient as such. So yeah, that was the game between Topalov and Nakamura. Just to recap the key moments, we kind of saw Black getting a nice b5 move as a way to accelerate his queenside play with this tricky knight a5 idea, which I think if your opponents are below about 2-400, I don't think they will be really ready for this, because this is a very fresh sort of development in King's Indian theory, only from the last 3 or 4 years. And the other key moment was kind of a bit later when, you know, we saw this position where Black could have taken the bishop, and possibly it was his best move. But in the end, Nakamura was rewarded for some very nice tactical ideas, very much in the spirit of the King's Indian defense. And, you know, once White missed this trick, it was, you know, all downhill from there. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed my video. Comments as always, and thoughts are welcome. But yeah, I hope we we had a good time with this video, and yeah, I will see you in the next clip. Bye bye.